What does the Bible teach about hell? Well, first of all, it teaches it's a real place. Matthew 25 says that God has prepared hell for the devil and his angels. In the words of Matthew in his gospel, it says, in Jesus' response to one of the questions that was asked him, he was always asked questions by people who, not always, but he most of the time was asked questions, at least in the Gospel of Matthew, by people who wanted to catch him and see if they couldn't blame him for a bad answer. And so it was with the Sadducees who didn't believe in the resurrection. But here in Matthew 25, verse 41, it tells us that Jesus believed in hell. It says, then, this is Jesus talking about the judgment when the king calls some of them from his right hand and says, blessed are you of my Father. And then he says to those that are on his left hand, inasmuch as ye have done it to one of the least of my, this is right hand, the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. Then shall he say to them that are on his left hand, depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. And you remember why the description is given this way. And people who believe that the Bible teaches things in dispensations or in certain ways at certain times believe that this refers to the Jews who were preaching the gospel during the 7-year period called the Great Tribulation. So he says, I was hungry and you gave me meat, gave me no meat. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, you took me in naked and you clothed me not, sick and in prison and you visited not me. And they would say to him, when did all this happen? And he said, inasmuch as you did not do it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did not do it to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. So Jesus said there's going to be a place where those who reject his love, those who do not accept what he's done on the cross, will enter into everlasting punishment, the place called hell. The second thing we say about hell, not only is it a real place, it's prepared for the devil and his angels, not ever prepared for human beings, but as we read in Jesus' words, it's an eternal place. Everlasting fire is determined as part of the punishment. That's described for us in Isaiah 33 and again in Revelation 20, where the kind of suffering that is experienced by those who are punished for refusing the love of God is that intense, destructive element of skin which is burned. And the Bible says that the place of hell is a place of suffering for all eternity. And in particular, Jesus says, don't be afraid of those who can kill the body. In the 10th chapter of Matthew, again, in verse 28, he says, fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. If you're going to be afraid of something, be afraid of the real issue. Be afraid of going to hell where body and soul are destroyed. It's a place of fire and brimstone. Revelation 14 says that Satan and the false prophet and the beast that are described in the book of Revelation are all thrown into the lake of fire. And then it's a place where there is a brimstone. Not something that we think about or that we use very much in our society. but it's a kind of stone that heats from within itself and absorbs heat from things that are around it. And then it becomes untouchable. It becomes treacherous if you put your hands on or you touch some part of your body to brimstone. So again, you get this constant punishment that is described as fire and brimstone. Then we need to ask ourselves, who will be in hell? Well, the Bible makes it clear that the devil will be in hell. Now, we hear stories very often about the devil and act like he's in charge of hell. That's not the case. One that I remember that my friend who is a politician tells me is that a man died and he went to the gate and Peter said, "We're not quite ready for you yet." This is an apocryphal story, you remember. You can go and try out hell for a few days, and you can come back and try out heaven for a few days, and then you make the choice as to which you want. So he said, "I'll try out hell first." And he got down there, and there was a beautiful golf course and a great country club, and all of his friends were there, and they had a wonderful time. And after 7 days, Peter called him and said, "Come on up now, you're going to get to try out heaven." So the politician came up and he tried out heaven for 7 days. And it was okay, but they sang hymns and they worshiped and they did a lot of things that weren't very exciting to him. So at the end of 7 days, Peter said, "What do you want to choose?" He said, "Well, I think I never would have believed I would say this, but I think I want to choose hell." Peter said, "Okay, you've made your decision. Go ahead and go." He gets down to where hell is, and he sees people in ragged clothes digging among ashes, shoveling materials into a furnace. And he says, "Wait a minute, a little bit ago, I saw this country club and we had this great experience with my friends." And as the story goes, the devil said, "Yesterday we were campaigning. Today you voted. So if you're going to vote, make sure who you vote for and why you vote for that person." Well, that's a little off-side story, but it's one that fits into a lot of things that we do about hell. We decide we'd rather laugh about it than deal with it in truth. So in addition to the devil being in hell and the beast and the false prophet described in Revelation 20:10, fallen angels will be in hell. 2 Peter tells us, and Jude 6 also reminds us, that all of the angels who followed Satan, who is called Lucifer in the Old Testament, he's called the son of morning, and he is described as being a very powerful angel who wanted to become like God, but he was thrown out of heaven. When he did, a number of angels followed him. We're not sure how many exactly, but a sizable number. That's where the demons come from. And so those angels are going to also be in hell. Psalm 9:17 tells us that the wicked shall be turned into hell. What does it mean to be wicked? It means to place sin, to place choices for that which is eternally negative, eternally destructive in our lives, to place those choices before the love of God and before the cross of Christ. So I choose to turn my back on God. That's really the definition of wickedness. Sin in the New Testament is defined as not living up to the standard of the glory of God. Wickedness is turning your back on the glory of God and saying, "I don't have anything to do with it." And Psalm 9 reminds us that the wicked will go into hell. Another group that will be in hell is anyone whose name is not written in the book of life. Revelation 20:15 says, if the name was not found written in the book of life, then that person was not admitted into heaven, but was cast into hell. Now, there's several references to the book of life and the books of life in the book of Revelation. This appears to be the one in which John says a new name is written down. So when you receive Christ, your name is written in this book. It may be that all the names of all human beings are there, but if you reject Christ and you do not receive what he's done for you, then your name is blotted out of that book. And so when it comes to the judgment in Revelation 20:15, it says, if your name is not found written in the book of life, you are turned away into hell. Begins to cause us to tremble about eternity if we're trusting in anything but the blood of Jesus Christ, who died for us on the cross, that he might provide for us an incorruptible inheritance that fades not away. And the final group that I want to mention who will be in hell is described in Matthew 7:21 as those who refuse to do the will of God. Jesus very often refers to the will of God as being tied to the doctrine of heaven, the kingdom of heaven. And you remember Matthew 5, 6, and 7, those three chapters are Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And in chapter 7, he mentions in verse 21 how some people think their idea of why they should get into heaven is such, but God's idea is different. And it says, verse 21, not everyone that says unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father, which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. So if you have any questions about what is the basis or the foundation of being in heaven, Jesus makes it very clear. It is relationship. I never knew you, he said. We never had a relationship. So if you want to be sure you're going to heaven and not going to hell, you want to make sure that you know Jesus Christ. I didn't say know about Jesus. A lot of people know about Jesus, but don't know Jesus. To know Jesus is to come to the place that one of Jesus' illustrations about prayer says the publican, the illegitimate member of society, as it were, the cheat, the thief, the radical. He said, if you're like this guy, then listen to his prayer. And he said, Lord, be merciful to me, a sinner. That's where we start with God if we want to go to heaven. We admit honestly who we are for him. Well, we talked about who will be in hell, not a group you want to join. Let's talk about the opposites, the contrast between heaven and hell. And there are four main descriptions that you want to remember. The first is, if you believe in heaven, you believe in a real place. So when you believe in hell, you believe in a real place. But heaven is prepared for those that love Jesus. He said, I'm going to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I'm going to come and receive you unto myself. Hell is not prepared for human beings. It says clearly in the text, hell is prepared for the devil and his angels. You have to choose to go to hell just like you have to choose to go to heaven. And if you decide, I'll do it on my own, that's a choice that says, I'm good enough to get into heaven. And unfortunately, if you believe that, you'll wind up in hell. Both are prepared places. Then heaven is characterized by happiness where no sin exists. Hell is a place of sin where no happiness exists. Can you imagine living with all the desires, all the wishes that you have now, but none of them are ever fulfilled? That would be the destruction of the soul. And perhaps that would be another way that we might describe what's in hell. It's a fire, and we have a lot of fires within us that are unquenched. Fires of temptation, fires of lust, fires of desire for power. And these fires will be with us if you're in hell, and they will never be satisfied. Hell is an awful place, and you don't really want to go there, and I know I don't want to go there, because that's a place I want to avoid, and thank God through Jesus I will.
Many are they increased that trouble me. Many are they that rise up against me. Many there be which say of my soul, there is no help for him in God. But thou, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and the lifter of my head. Oh, thou, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and the lifter of my head. I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill. Ooh, I laid me down and slept and awaked, for the Lord sustained, for he sustained me. Thou, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and the lifter of my head. Oh, thou, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and the lifter of my head. For thou, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and the lifter of my head. Oh, for thou, O Lord, are a shield glory and the lifter of my head. For thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory and the lifter of my head. Oh, for thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory and the lifter of my head.